So, I know a lot of people have been wondering, where's Ezra? Why have we seen so little of him? And is he still with Thrawn? Well, I think you might have an idea. What if Ezra Bridger has actually been working for Thrawn this entire time, just without knowing it? What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Cantina Talk. So, I know a lot of you, along with myself, have been wondering why we haven't seen a whole lot of Ezra in these 4 trailers that we currently have for Ahsoka. The most we've seen of Ezra has been in his pre-recorded holo message that Sabine replaying, as well as the mural on Lothal. What if I were to tell you that we might have been seeing Ezra this entire time, just without knowing it yet? Some of you who watch my videos and are subscribed might have seen my video on, is Ezra Bridger actually this Inquisitor in Ahsoka? In this video, I stated that I believe Ezra is the Inquisitor, and still to this day I'm leaning more towards that. As most of you know by now, the name of the Inquisitor has been released, and that being Merrick. I honestly believe that the name is most likely actually a code name or a new identity that the Inquisitor has either been forced to take or has taken it without any prior knowledge of his past. The last theory on his name is a little lame, but does also make sense. And that theory being that his name is actually a cover-up / placeholder until the Inquisitor's true identity is revealed. This isn't far-fetched by any means, but without further ado, let me explain on how I think this Inquisitor is actually Ezra and is working for Thrawn. So in Chapter 19 of Mando Season 3, we see this device that Dr. Pershing instantly says is the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer is a piece of equipment that the Empire had used during its reign. This would be used to not only wipe the minds of its victims, but also to put them into a trance-like state. This machine was first referenced in Mando Season 1 by Cara Dune, saying that if she was to surrender to the Empire, she would get hooked up to one. This was instantly shut down by Grief Karga when he said that they were just Imperial propaganda, but we later found out in Mando Season 3 that they very much in fact are real. This is in the form of the 602 Mitigator, which was stated to be a non-invasive experimental treatment that had recently been approved for rehabilitation. Dr. Pershing, on the other hand, instantly shut this down. When he first saw it, he instantly stated that it was the Mind Flayer. And this was literally the second he put his eyes on it. Supposedly, though, the mitigator at low voltages is able to help soothe select traumatic memories. We had seen Lion Kane turn this up to 11, though, and it seemed like it was in fact frying Dr. Pershing's brain and basically turned his mind into mush. If Dr. Pershing, on first glance of the machine, instantly knew that this was a Mind Flayer, it leads me to believe that during his stay on Mount Tantus on the planet Wayland, he had encountered one of these, if not used it for his own research and or experiments. This was also theorized in Mando Season 3 that Moff Gideon had been hooked up to one once the New Republic had captured him, although we all know that this wasn't the case. We also had seen in Rogue One this octopus-like creature that was actually a Myran, and this Myran was named Borgullet. This creature had the ability to read minds and erase or alter memories of the person that it was using its powers on. As far as we know in canon, the Empire was in possession of at least 3 of these creatures. Now, we all know that Disney would not just waste all this money on the CGI and the creation of this machine for just a 3-second scene from a callback from Season 1 of The Mandalorian. And Disney likes to do this thing where they mention or reference something in one show or in a season, and then will later come back to it in either an entirely different show or a later season of the show that was first referenced. I believe that this machine is either going to show up in Ahsoka or is going to show up in the Heir to the Empire movie. If anyone would have access to a machine like this and these types of capabilities, it would undoubtedly be Thrawn. With that, we saw a creature in Rebels called the Ysalamari. These creatures were previously only in Legends, with them being introduced in the Heir to the Empire trilogy. We had seen them in Season 3 of Rebels in Thrawn's office aboard the Chimera. This was his flagship among with the 7th Fleet. The Ysalamari in his office, though, were only a sculpture, but they were positioned right behind his chair. There was also a shot in Rebels where Thrawn is in his chair and the Ysalamari are framed on both of his shoulders. I believe this is without a doubt foreshadowing for the Heir to the Empire movie. These creatures were able to repel the Force, meaning that an attack such as a Force Push or Force Lightning would not have any effect on the person that was holding the creature, essentially creating a Force neutral bubble. I 100% believe that we are going to see these creatures for the first time in the Heir to the Empire movie, which is also being directed by Dave Filoni. These creatures are very important to the Heir to the Empire story as well, so them not being here would kind of be a little weird. I'm now going to move on to the theory part of this video. I believe that when Thrawn and Ezra had come out of hyperspace at the end of Rebels, they ended up in one of 2 places. One of those places is the New Beyond, and the other one is somewhere in the unknown regions. I'm going to go into the first theory, that one being the New Beyond. There were reports last year in December that Ahsoka might be introducing the New Beyond as part of a new galaxy. With that, there were reports a couple months ago that there was going to be this large-scale battle on the Nodian Highlands. This fight would include Ahsoka and Sabine going up against Morgan Elsbeth, Balin, and Shin. The Nodian Highlands, as of right now, are completely new to Star Wars and aren't a part of any planet or system. This news does have some traction with a couple of shots from the trailers that we have, but the same thing could be said for the second theory for the unknown regions. With the first shot, we have Morgan Elsbeth upon the flight deck area of the ship with a golden interior. We see a bunch of star maps and droids here along with her. If you look up behind her as well, you can see that she is in space. And if you look closely too, the ship seems to be stationary. Also, if you look out into the space down in the middle, You can see that there's a greenish looking planet giving off a green hue. We later on see in the same trailer that Thrawn is walking up to this flight deck, and it is on the same exact ship that Morgan Elsbeth was on earlier. If you look out towards the right of Thrawn, there's a mountain there along with it being daytime. On the left of him seems to be a forest of some kind or a grassy highland. This could be the Nodian Highlands. The surface of this planet is also greenish. So could this be later on in the show where Morgan Elsbeth has found Thrawn and they're going to this planet together? Or is this Morgan Elsbeth arriving at this planet in search of Thrawn? This is where my new Beyond theory ends due to there not being a whole lot more on the setting. This lacks the question though of where Ezra is and where would he be. Now I'm going to go into the unknown regions theory, and this is my personal favorite one. In Knights of the Old Republic, the Rakatan Empire pretty much ruled the galaxy. One of the things that the Rakatans had constructed was the StarForge. The StarForge was built around 30,000 BBY. The forge was used to mass-produce ships, droids, weaponry, etc. It was also powered by the energy from stars and the Force. The way this forge worked was it would draw energy and matter from the stars in close proximity to it, along with it being accompanied by Force, which made it able to mass-produce all the things that I previously listed. With that, there were numerous star maps around the galaxy that would help lead and guide to the location of finding the StarForge. At this point in time, the Rakatan Empire pretty much ruled over 60% of the galaxy, and the Sith ruled about another 25%, and the rest was ruled by previous empires that had been there. This caused the Rakatans to have to make these star maps to be able to locate the StarForge due to it being constantly moving and being repositioned. We see in the official trailer of Ahsoka that the dome is being activated. It looks very similar to the star maps that were being used to locate the StarForge, even down to the design and the shape of the dome. I believe that Baylan and Shin are being tasked by Morgan Elsbeth to find the golden sphere-looking orb that was in the temple that Ahsoka had entered. I think that this is going to be one of the pieces of the puzzle that activates these ruins. The temple, although I believe it might be a Jedi temple, looks really old. 25,000 BBY is when the Galactic Republic was formed and therefore the Jedi. I believe that this temple might be older than that. I believe that this orb is going to be one of the main keys to finding Thrawn, and for finding out where Thrawn is and where possibly Ezra could have ended up as well. That Thrawn and Ezra might have ended up in the unknown regions, because for 30,000 years the unknown regions have stayed the exact same, the unknown regions. I think they might have ended up stranded in the deep space of the unknown regions. The windows of the command center where Ezra and Thrawn were smashed in while they were grabbing Thrawn, so Ezra would have had to do something so that him and Thrawn were able to breathe while they were in hyperspace. I think that Thrawn is going to get loose, but he and Ezra are going to have to work together to survive. Somehow, I believe that Thrawn will either lead them and the damaged Star Destroyer to the Chiss, or will activate something like a homing beacon for the Chiss and they'll end up finding them both. Almost like the beginning of Avengers Endgame when Carol Danvers finds Tony Stark and Nebula. I think that the Chiss are going to bring Thrawn and Ezra to Chilla, and there's where I think the tables are going to turn. I think that Ezra might let his guard down a little bit during all of this, and I think that Thrawn is going to be playing a mental game with him the entire time. In the new canon Thrawn trilogy, we see Thrawn do this to Vader multiple times, and he even starts to get into Vader's head a little bit. Each and every single time Darth Vader looked through the Force to see Thrawn and to see what true intentions were, Thrawn still seemed innocent in his ways. With Thrawn having the engravings of the Yus Alamari aboard the Chimera, I think that the origin of them might have been changed, and the new homeworld of them is going to be on Chilla. I think once Thrawn is home and gets the Yus Alamari in his possession, he's going to somehow imprison Ezra. This will work for a couple of reasons. The Yus Alamari repel the Force, so anything that Ezra does with the Force won't help him at all. Also, Ezra is also missing his lightsaber. Sabine is currently in possession of it. So that has left Ezra with only being able to use martial arts. And if Ezra tries to fight Thrawn in hand-to-hand combat, I believe he will lose. Don't get me wrong, Ezra is a great fighter when it comes to hand-to-hand, but also he uses the Force to his advantage in those fights. Thrawn, on the other hand, is not Force sensitive, but is a heavily trained and experienced fighter. I believe that Thrawn will win that fight, although Ezra might do some damage and get some good punches in, but in the end, Thrawn will win and Ezra will end up imprisoned. I think here's where the Yus Alamari are going to come into play. If Thrawn leaves him in the cell with Ezra, it could render him useless and beaten. With this comes the Mind Flayer. I think either the Chiss or Thrawn are going to be in possession of this, and my bet is that Thrawn has one aboard his flagship, the Chimera. We all know that Thrawn isn't Force sensitive, but everyone is forgetting this crucial detail about Thrawn. He is insanely smart. With how much time Thrawn had spent serving the Emperor, as well as going on missions with Vader, I believe he would not only have a lot to learn from them, but also would study their ways. Thrawn was also serving the Empire during the reign of the Inquisitors, and most likely would have been privy to seeing the interrogation of the fallen Jedi and the torture that they went through and endured to become Inquisitors. Thrawn also is going to have 13 years alone with Ezra. I believe that Thrawn is going to use the Mind Flayer on Ezra not only to do as much damage to him mentally, but to also wipe his memory of his parents, Lothal, the Ghost Crew, Sabine. This would lead Ezra to forget everyone and everything he had done that had led up to his sacrifice. This torturous process is not going to happen overnight, and I think it's going to take place over a couple months, if not a couple years, to fully wipe his mind, and then to start the process of making him a new identity, and thus to lead him into becoming Thrawn's personal Inquisitor. I think the process of Ezra becoming an Inquisitor is where the real torture is going to start. They might even be using different Chiss techniques of torture, making it very slowly and painfully for Ezra to endure. I full-heartedly think and believe that this new identity that Thrawn is making for Ezra is going to make him hate everyone and everything to do with Rebels, the New Republic, through Thrawn manipulating and deceiving him. I also think that Thrawn will start slowly introducing the name Morak to Ezra and will use the Mind Flayer to his advantage to brainwash him into believing that that is truly who he is. The name Morak literally translates to a knight thought to be a werewolf. We all know how much Dave Filoni loves wolves and the symbolism behind them. In the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni voiced a character named Embo. He was a bounty hunter who also had a pet wolf by the same name of Morak. With Balin Skoll and Shin Hati, they are both named after wolves in Norse mythology. The proof is literally in the pudding here. I honest to God think that Dave Filoni is just seriously messing with us here in the best way possible. Now with this, the StarForge was previously destroyed during the reign of the Rakatan Empire. However, the Rakatans were not given the name the Builders for no reason. I believe that the Rakatans would not be dumb enough only make one StarForge, and this be the sole thing that's producing their entire military as well as all their other technological advances. I think that they would have had a couple of these, at least 3, and one of them might have been stationed close to the unknown regions. If that was the case, I believe an attack would have happened and that the majority of the troops had lost contact with the Rakatan Empire. The remaining troops would have died due to the lack of oxygen, dehydration, and starvation. This would all be happening as the station would float out into deep space in the unknown regions. I believe that the Chiss, at some point in time, are going to come into possession of this, and Thrawn is going to end up trying to use it to reach the Empire, but to no avail, and instead he's going to contact Morgan Elsbeth. And that this is where I believe she's going to inform him that the Empire is no more, that he would have her presumably try to come find him, since maybe with the New Republic and the Chiss, they do not have the best relationship yet, and are not on good terms. With that, I'm going to go back to the photos and shots that we have from the trailers. As well, we have this concept art drawing of the interior of Morgan Elsbeth's golden ship. This concept art even depicts a Chiss officer controlling the ship. This is a big hint. Along with that, the shot of Thrawn walking through the ship, I believe, might be taking place on the planet Wayland, and to the right of Thrawn is Mount Tantus. This would give light to the same fight that we heard about that is going to be taking place on those highlands, and I believe those highlands are actually to the left of Thrawn on Wayland, thus bringing Thrawn's return. Mount Tantus and planet Wayland are huge parts of the story for the Heir to the Empire, so they're definitely going to be making their live-action appearance. With all that being said, the evidence that I believe makes the most sense is from the official trailer, where we see Thrawn slowly walking in this dark golden area, and behind him are these large black and golden pillars, as well as these troopers behind him. This place looks pretty similar to the parts of the interior of the StarForge, along with the dome that looks eerily similar to the star maps that were used to lead to the StarForge's location. To tie this all up, I believe that once Thrawn has Ezra turned, there might be Inquisitor gear on the Chimera. Also, when we look at the Inquisitor's gear, we do not see any Imperial insignias. These insignias are on every single Inquisitor that we have seen so far in canon. Although, this Inquisitor does not have one single Empire insignia across all of his armor. This also leads me to believe that maybe the gear was even made in the StarForge, and that also possibly be where the lightsaber is. I know that this is a little far-fetched, and I do believe that this is, and I do really understand that this is kind of out there. I know towards the end of that theory that it might be leading into the fanfiction side of things, but there still is a lot of proof and evidence, as well as similarities to all the things that I had mentioned. Some might think it's far-fetched and pretty out there, and some might agree with the points I made. At the end of the day, I just cannot wait to see what the show has in store for all of us. I'm really excited for the show to come out, and I know a lot of you are as well. Quickly, I would just like to say that I'm going to be doing live watch parties of the episodes when they release at 2 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday nights for me. I would love to see some of you there. As well, Jar Jar Jargon and myself are going to be starting up a weekly podcast during Ahsoka to discuss the episodes, our thoughts, and our theories for the next week. Kind of like Nerd Theory. With all of that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And lastly, may the Force be with you all.